grilling, getting hot and hotter, sous vide and chilling from fire and water.
Welcome back to the Fire and Water Cooking Podcast. I'm Darren, I'm your host, and today we've got a guest that's been on a couple times before, but one of my favorites, probably one of your favorites too, from all the downloads he gets, Mr. John Stezler of Man Cave Meals. Welcome back, John. We're going to discuss some great topics today. Welcome back. Tell them all where you're from, who you are, and all that.
Thanks, Darren. It's good to be back again. I'm John Stezler. I live up here in western North Carolina in the foothills of the mountains, and I've been barbecuing and grilling for quite a while now. I've been doing it on the social media front for, I think, since 2012. So it's been about 8 years that I've been involved in social media, barbecuing and grilling, and it's just been a blast.
Yeah, I think I ran into you probably 4 or 5 years ago, probably about 5 years ago when I first started looking at the Kamado style grills, because Kamado Guru was one of the first websites I actually found, and that was your baby. That's how you first started, I guess, on the social media side, was that old bulletin board type group that's still going, But I was searching for some information on Kamado type grills, and I found Kamado Guru and had a lot of information on there, and started following you, and then found you on Facebook and everything else. So let's talk about how you got started with the Kamado Guru and all that.
Okay, well, Kamado Guru came about shortly after I got my first Kamado grill, which was the Char Griller Acorn, and a lot of people have started out with that grill. It's a steel Kamado, $299 from Lowe's, and it does a very good job for what it is. It's an inexpensive way for people to get into Kamado grilling, and there weren't very many people using that grill when I first got mine, and I had actually gone to YouTube to look for some information on that grill before I bought it, and I didn't find any. And that set off a few alarms that were good alarms, actually. That tells me, I've got an opportunity here. If I buy that grill and make some video content using that grill, I'm going to be one of the first guys on YouTube with it. So that's what I did. And then I built the forum to try to get more Kamado users together. I could not find a Kamado forum anywhere either, and to my knowledge, there's still not one. I haven't actually gone out and looked for another one lately, but I think the KamadoGuru.com website is the only dedicated forum for Kamado owners out there, and it grew fairly rapidly. I put a lot of time and a lot of work into it, making content to go on that site, and it does fairly well now. It's got, I think we're close to 20,000 members there. I haven't looked at that number lately, but the forum activity kind of slowing down a little bit. It's in this day and time, I think Facebook has taken the front seat in that arena, and there's not quite as much activity on the .com forum as there used to be.
So you're saying that you started growing the regular website, and then Facebook kind of slowly took it over, right?
It did. I decided several years after I started KamadoGuru.com to start the Kamado Guru Facebook page. And even it didn't take very long with the Kamado Guru Facebook page for it to grow. It doesn't have as many members as the KamadoGuru.com website does, but it has a lot more active members. The number of posts per day on the KamadoGuru.com website is a lot higher or a lot lower than on the Facebook page. Facebook page gets a lot more content, But there is a lot of content there. You can see that Kamado Guru or that Kamado Cooking and Discussion Forum there has 231,000 posts in it. So yeah, there's a vast amount of knowledge on that site. Most of my site traffic on that site lands people there through Google searches, and that's just how that site works these days. But the number of new posts on that site every day is not very much compared to the Facebook group.
Yeah. But still, you're going to get a lot of traffic. And like you said, there's a lot of content on there that you can't pull over from Facebook. So it's always a good resource for people. 36,000, like you said, you started with the Acorn. And that was one of the things when I first found you is that's what made me buy my Acorn, because that's exactly what I did. I bought my Acorn because I saw several people on the Kamado Guru say, what you should do is buy something cheaper to see if you like this style of cooking before you make that type of investment. And that's the type of person I am. I don't want to go out and spend $1,000 on something and not know if I'm going to like that type of cooker. So the $250 to $300 range that the Acorn is in fit the wallet that I needed to be able to budget to talk the wife into, and then gave me the opportunity to try out that type of cooking. Not to saying that an Acorn is exactly like a Kamado Joe or a Big Green Egg, but it's very similar, and it's a similar type of cooker.
Exactly. The Acorn, when I bought that Acorn, I had saved up the money to buy a Big Green Egg, and I was planning to go the very next week to a friend of mine's shop and buy the Big Green Egg. I had not seen the Acorn, and I didn't know anything about it. But when I stumbled across it, I said, I'm willing to throw $300 at that to see if it's usable or not. And then if I don't like it, I'll go back and buy the Big Green Egg. Well, I put it through its paces. I cooked on it pretty hard for 6 or 7 months, and still decided even after that I still wanted a ceramic cooker. But during that time and the advent of KamadoGuru.com, I learned that the Big Green Egg wasn't the only player in that game. And that's mainly why I ended up with something else and went with Kamado Joe instead.
Now, before you got that Acorn, did you do any kind of social media at all? I mean, you didn't start any YouTube videos or anything like that until you got that cooker. Is that correct?
No, I had done some videos on YouTube prior to getting the Acorn. The Acorn was not my first videos. I had done some video content on a Weber kettle and on my Weber Smoky Mountain before I got the Acorn. But I didn't have much of a following until I got the Acorn. The Acorn's what made my subscriber count go way up and go way up quickly.
Now, did your excitement about cooking, and starting that, you're doing more content go up when you got the Acorn and then when you got the Kamado Joe?
Absolutely. The Acorn, once I started getting a lot of followers, and at this time, when I say a lot of followers, I'm talking about maybe 4,000 or 5,000 followers on YouTube. It started to get fairly exciting. I was also following some of the other barbecue guys like Troy, for instance, Greg Mervich, Alan Johnson out in California, and a couple other people. We kind of ran together. We had a little group. We supported each other, and we were all growing our channels. But things started to change dramatically when I started getting emails from people saying, "Hey, can I send you my product to try out and use on your channel?" That's when things start to really get exciting, as you already know.
So when did you start really getting involved with Kamado Joe? Because that's another thing, not too long after I discovered Kamado Guru, I saw that you had hooked up with Kamado Joe and started doing some of their videos for their YouTube channel and Facebook and all that.
Right. I hooked up with Kamado Joe in 2013, late in the year in 2013. that was at the point where I had decided I still wanted a ceramic Kamado, and I was not going to continue with the Acorn. And like I said, as my channel was growing and people were giving me equipment to use on my channel in exchange for, just giving them a shout out, I decided I was going to ask Kamado Joe if they would like to provide me with a grill, and they did, and that's how that got started. At first, I was just doing the Kamado Joe. I was using the Kamado Joe on the Man Cave Meals channel, just using it. I of course did a walk around demo and a review of the product when I got it, and I was just doing my general cooking with it, and that apparently had a big enough impact with Kamado Joe at that time that they decided they would like for me to produce content exclusively for them. And it wasn't very long after that that we came to an agreement to make that happen. And we temporarily shut down the Man Cave Meals Facebook, or we shut down the Man Cave Meals YouTube channel during a good bit of that time until we recently opened it back up. It's been 2 or 3 years ago that I brought Man Cave Meals back, but I still agree to exclusively cook on Kamado Joe grills, Kamado Joe Kamados. I still have an agreement with them that I will not use a different Kamado grill, and I wouldn't want to use a different Kamado grill, to be honest with you.
Hey, all, I want to introduce you to a company I just started working with, Fresh Jack's Organic Spices out of Jacksonville, Florida. They're a small, family-run company that's fast-growing. I've tried a bunch of their different seasoning blends and spices, and I can tell you they're all fresh, all organic. None of them contain artificial flavors or sweeteners. None of them have anti-caking agents or preservatives. They all taste like they were just made for you yesterday. Check them out, guys. They're on Amazon in the link below. They have different sample packs, different blends. Like I said, they also have the individual seasonings and spices as well. Fresh Jack's Organic Spices. Check them out, guys. I love them.
All right, so we had a little technical issue there, and we think we got that fixed. So you had an exclusive with Kamado Joe for a while. Then they allowed you to start going back to your Man Cave Meals and doing other grills, but they were exclusive on the ceramic side. So that gave you the chance to reopen the Man Cave Meals website or the YouTube channel, and now you have the Facebook group or Facebook page for Man Cave Meals and the Facebook group as well. So it sounds like that was great to get you really a good boost in audience, correct?
Well, it did, and I've got no problem with cooking exclusively on the Kamado Joe Kamado. Even if I did not have this partnership with Kamado Joe, I'd still be cooking on that Kamado. I don't think there's anything else that I would want to cook on. And even if Kamado Joe booted me out the door today, I'd still be cooking on the Kamado Joe grill. I love that grill, and I'm not using that grill just because it's been provided to me. I would buy that grill if that's what it took. So yeah, it gives me the opportunity to cook on some other equipment. Like, as you know, I've got the wood-fired pizza oven. I've got the Karubicue. Masterbuilt now has also, since they own Kamado Joe, has given me the opportunity to cook on their new Gravity Series smokers, which has been pretty nice. I've been cooking on a PK grill. My association with Atlanta Grill Company is allowing me to explore a lot of different equipment these days.
Yeah, I'm just kind of showing people the Man Cave Meals Facebook page and your YouTube channel, and they'll be able to see once they see the videos how they kind of stop there for a while and then start coming back. But I agree with you 100% on the Kamado Joe. Like I said, the Kamado Guru and you were one of my first exposures to Kamado grills, and I'm one that looks at things 150 different ways before I buy something. And,
Right.
And I make sure that it has what I want and what I need. And I don't get too caught up in just brand name. The brand's got to makes sense to me. It's got to have everything I want and need, and the quality's got to be there. And Kamado Joe, you know, I went and bought, you know, the Big Joe was my first Kamado Joe, and I paid $1,200 for it at Costco. So I mean, I sunk a big chunk of change into it, and I love that grill. And before I even started doing this, and one of the things that really I loved about it was the versatility of what it could do. But it really recaptured my, got me going back on cooking outside again, because I had on and off cooked outside, done smoking. I always loved to cook, but I really hadn't done a whole lot of outdoor cooking until I got the Big Joe, and really started expanding, you know, into the outdoor cooking. You know, my whole desire was to get everything out on the grill. And to me, you know, that's the fun of it, and that's kind of what you do. You show so many different ways to cook things outdoors, and now not just on the Kamado Joe, but now that you use the pellet grill, you use the wood fired oven, you show people multiple ways to cook outdoors. And I'm glad that you still are representing Kamado Joe to some extent, but now you have the ability to expand that with other products and other, you know, especially working with Atlanta Grill Company, which is another great company. So, yeah, I mean, I love the content you've always done. I mean, I think people really appreciate the different things that, not just complicated things. You know, there's a lot of different guys out there. They try to see how complicated they can get things, you know, and how fancy they can make them. But you do a lot of simple stuff to show people you can be, you know, creative with just simple ingredients. And that's what I love about it.
Yeah, exactly. I have an appreciation for all the complicated food. And as you know, I don't spend a whole lot of time with that. And unfortunately, I probably should spend more time working on plating and at least making it look nice. But I don't like a lot of the cookbooks that I've come across in the past uh, because the pictures in these cookbooks are amazing. The recipes are amazing, but when you really get down to looking at those things, they're a lot more complicated than the average cook is going to do in his backyard. The Weber cookbooks, I think, are the biggest offender of that in my mind from the books I've looked at. And I get feedback from people, especially when I do something that is on the complicated side. But some of the complicated stuff I've done, I think one of the most complicated cooks I've ever done on a Kamado would have been the beef Wellington several years ago before Christmas. But I was blown away by how many people came back to me after that and showed me pictures of the beef Wellington they had made. And most of them looked better than mine. And people were just blown away by how good that is and how it's not quite as difficult as people make it out to be. But yeah, I like cooking simple stuff. I like just anything that'll get somebody to try something on their grill that they might not have considered doing on the grill before.
Definitely. And I see, we talked about this before, more and more people getting out on in their backyards and on their patios cooking, especially with all these new type of smokers that are coming out, and that keep coming out, all this innovation that keeps coming out with these new smokers. And you just talked about it with the Karubicue and the Masterbuilt Gravity Fed series. That's a real hot one right now, that Gravity series, because, the pellet grills have been growing for the last, I don't know, 8 to 10 years. They've been getting more and more technical with the Wi-Fi and everything. But, here comes Masterbuilt with this charcoal based Wi-Fi type unit, first of its kind, and that's blowing people away. And I know you had the 560, and now you got the 1050. What are your thoughts on that type of cooker?
Well, I am amazed with the capabilities of that. The cooking, the charcoal fire on that system's really nice. It gives you the ability. The first 2 videos I did using the 1050, the first video I did was smoked beef jerky down around 160 or 170 degrees Fahrenheit to show you how you can do that on that smoker. And the next video I did was at the opposite end of that spectrum. I took a tomahawk ribeye and did a reverse sear where I smoked it at 250 until I got up near temperature, and then I cranked the 1050 up to 600, 700 degrees to finish it off with a sear. It's got a lot of versatility, a whole lot of versatility for a automated charcoal grill. And you're right, it is a new concept. The gravity feed system is not a new concept, but what makes this unique in the markets that it's computer controlled, and it is a grill and a smoker, and it can do everything in between. The existing gravity feed smokers that are out there now are smokers. They're not grills. They're not designed to run at high temperatures. They're all designed to do your low and slow smoking, and they're all super expensive, even the small ones. Usable size, one of those, I think, if I'm not mistaken, they started around $2,000. The Masterbuilt 560 rolls in at $499, and the 1050 rolls in at $799.
And that's cheap even for a pellet grill. That's not, the non-Wi-Fi or Bluetooth based pellet grills are that price. So to have
Exactly.
something that you can actually monitor, not to say that it's a top of the line, but for what it can do and what it does for that price range, I mean, it's getting, super popular right now. And a lot of people are getting them that have been holding off on pellet grills, because pellet grills get that bad rep of not having a good smoke profile or what have you. So people are looking at this as, hey, I got the same type of convenience of a pellet grill with the, ability to kind of set it and forget it and monitor it with the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, but I can get that real charcoal and wood flavor that I can't get from a pellet grill.
Exactly. The pellet grill, I like the flavor profile I get from the Gravity series a lot better than from my pellet grill. The pellet grill's got some advantages, and the main advantage that the pellet grill has over the Gravity series is it's much more fuel efficient. The Gravity series is a fuel hog. It runs through a lot of charcoal. I've done a couple of tests on the 1050, and I didn't do this test with the 560 when I had it, but I ran the 1050 for, I think, 7.5 hours at 250 degrees on a full chamber of charcoal, which I don't know how much of that is. I really should have. A whole chamber of charcoal doesn't tell you much, but it's a full load of charcoal on that grill. So running at 250, you would need to reload the charcoal after about 7.5 hours. It's not completely out at that point, but you don't want to let this grill go completely out before you reload the coal, or you'll have to relight it. I cooked a brisket on it at 300 degrees, and I did a video on that. And I'm trying to remember. I think I reloaded charcoal on that one at about the 4.5 hour mark. It wasn't completely empty, but it was a good point to load when I did it in the video. But it needed to be reloaded. And but the flavor profile you get from that grill, like I said, is fantastic. And I'm not a person who really gives a crap about how much my charcoal is costing. Charcoal cost is part of the cost of doing business with a grill, and I never let the cost of charcoal determine whether or not I like a grill or whether or not I'm going to cook on it. It's all about the flavor and the quality of the end product.
Yeah, I don't think that a hopper can hold a whole bag of charcoal, so I don't think it holds 20 pounds, right?
No, it won't hold 20 pounds. I'm not even sure if I can get 10 pounds in it. I'd have to
Yeah.
measure it. I've never weighed out what it'll hold, because once I dump it in there, I'd have to reach down in there from the top to get it all back out. It's designed not to really come back out once you put it in there. But another thing with the Gravity, is you can run briquettes in it. You can, if you want to cook with Kingsford briquettes, you can do that as well. But I don't know if you get any better efficiency or any better BTU per pound of charcoal with Kingsford in that grill or not.
Yeah, I think, pellets do cost a lot too. So, I mean, I bet you if you put a test to it, and that might be something you want to do in a video, because you have a pellet grill and you have that, you can kind of see, cook something similar for the similar amount of time and see how much you go through of each, fuel source, because, pellets can, I have a, Camp Chef pellet grill, and that thing can eat some pellets, if I'm doing a long cook. And pellets aren't cheap either. So, I mean, you're paying $12 to $15 for a bag, a 20-pound bag. Sometimes you can get the cheaper ones, of course, like the Pit Boss ones for a little bit cheaper, but you're still paying, good $12 a bag for 20-pound bag of pellets. And, if you're doing a longer cook, a pork butt or a brisket, you can use almost a whole bag of pellets on that. So, but like you said,
my pellet grill is a little more efficient, I think. But a 20-pound bag of pellets going through my grill will run way longer than 20 pounds of charcoal in the Masterbuilt. I've not timed that out either, but I just know based on how infrequently I reload the pellet hopper on my Traeger there.
but anyway, it's a great, I just love the way, grills and outdoor cooking is innovating still. I mean, there's still new cookers coming out, and every time you turn around, you go, well, they can't, think anything else. They do. Somebody comes out with something new, or they put a spin on it and make things better. So we're going to take a quick break. And one of the things we're going to talk about when we come back is some of the never-ending controversial barbecue topics or myths or whatever you want to talk about. We're going to run through a list, and then we're going to kind of discuss these. But we're going to talk about, more smokers and stuff down the line, I'm sure, as more stuff keeps coming out. It just doesn't seem to end. You got new controllers, new smokers, new things in the barbecue and outdoor cooking industry. Just it continues to blow my mind. So I'll be right back with John Stezler from Man Cave Meals. Hey all, I want to welcome again Inkbird as our sponsor for the Fire and Water Cooking Podcast. Inkbird has more than just barbecue thermometers and instant read thermometers that I've talked about before. Inkbird just came out with a Wi-Fi sous vide circulator that I've been using for a few weeks now that works pretty good. It has over 1,000 watts of power. Has an app that has many times and temps for meats and vegetables. Also has onboard times and temps for meats and vegetables. Runs really quiet. Fits most regular sous vide containers that are the size of the Innovas. So check it out. Look below. There's a link with a code for 30% off of the Amazon price that makes it under $60 right now till June 5th. So check out the Inkbird Wi-Fi sous vide circulator in the description below. Back to our program. All right, John, let's get into what we came here for now. I want to get into some of these, and these have been around for a long time, way before any of these cookers that we've been talking about. So, I mean, some of it's tradition, some of it's, what people learn from their dad or what they've, been doing most of their life. You got all these different barbecue sayings or techniques or myths or controversial things that people bring up that you have to do it this way or that way. I want to kind of discuss some of the stuff and go through a list here, and just me and you talking. We both got plenty of barbecue experience, and we know a lot of people that do the same thing, and I've discussed this with several other people at Malcolm Reed or Meathead Goldwyn, and discuss some of these things. So we all have our ideas and different things that we like to do. And but let's talk about the first thing I want to talk about is meat needs to be at room temperature before cooking. That's an old wives' tale and myth that's been around for a long time. What's your idea on meat needs to be at room temp?
Well, I definitely think it's a myth, and my personal experience is I like to be the exact opposite of that. I like my meat to be cold when I start, and mainly, I think that saying is associated with cooking steaks. I think people believe that their steaks cook more evenly and come out better when they're at room temperature. But one of the other things that I don't really understand, I've never tried bringing a steak to room temperature, but uh, if you take an inch thick or an inch and a half thick steak out of the refrigerator that's been in there for a few days, it'll probably take it 8 hours to come to room temperature. And I don't think I'm going to leave my meat sitting out on the counter that long. The I like searing cold meat, so it works better. And I honestly don't know where that started. I don't know where that myth came from or when it started or who started it. But yeah, I hear it pretty regularly. I hear people talking about it, and I just kind of blow it off. I've stopped trying to argue that one.
I always look at some of these things and try to put a scientific or common sense value to it. And that's why I like AmazingRibs.com so much, because Meathead does a lot of that with Dr. Blonder and, puts the science to it. And, why in the world would you want your meat sitting out in the danger zone for a longer period of time when it's not going to do anything to improve how it's cooking? Especially like with a brisket or a pork butt, you want it to be cold when you put it on the smoker, because it'll give you uh, you know more smoke adhering to the surface. Because meat loves, or smoke loves cold wet surfaces, and then if you put it on there at room temperature, you lose some of that benefit. So
Exactly. The searing of the cold. I like to sear the cold steak, um, and you coming from a sous vide standpoint would understand that better than most people, because if my steak's colder, I'm going to be able to get a better quality sear on the outside of that meat before I go to the low temperature side of my cook, where I've got less of that gray band that everybody wants to talk about. As you know, I don't do a whole lot of reverse sear. I'm in the sear first crowd, but when I sear that meat when it's cold, that sear doesn't cook the meat under the surface as quickly when the meat's cold as it might if it's 50 degrees warmer at room temperature.
yeah, that overcooking, the chance of overcooking it, when the warmer it is, the more of a chance you have it to surpass the temperature you want to finish it at. That is for sure. So let's go to another big one. Looking ain't cooking. You still hear this. I still hear barbecue gurus, self-proclaimed barbecue gurus say this on their videos and books. Looking ain't cooking.
Well, I know where that one came from, and it held true in my early days of barbecue, especially when I was cooking on the Weber kettle. Uh, the reason they say that's every time you open, like if you're smoking a butt or even a rack of ribs or something on a kettle, when you take that lid off, you lose all of your ambient heat. And when you put that lid back on, it takes it a while to bring that thing back up to the temperature you were before you put the or before you took the lid off. And the if you're looking, you're not cooking statement is actually the underlying reason I ended up with a Kamado grill. It's because I was trying to cook a pizza on my Weber kettle, and it was cold and windy that day, and I couldn't get the pizza to cook adequately. And I ended up having to bring it in, cook it in the oven. So yeah, there's a little bit of merit to the if you're looking, you ain't cooking, but that all depends on what kind of grill you're cooking on. If you've got a Kamado grill, you don't have that problem. If you've got any other kind of grill that's got enough thermal mass that when you open it and close the lid, it comes back to temperature fairly quickly, it's not a problem. But that still is a problem on things like the Weber kettle mainly. The Weber Smoky Mountain's not bad about it if you've got water in the water pan, but yeah, I know where that one came from, and I agree with it if you're using a Weber kettle.
Or even if you're using like, the cheap Home Depot type, offsets, because they got very thin metal. Anything that's not well insulated, that already has a difficult time retaining any kind of heat. I know even some of the cheaper pellet grills, they sell, big, thick insulated blankets for people up north to use during the colder months so that, they could actually get to a cooking temp because, you could, I guess some of the cheaper pellet grills up north without any kind of insulating blanket on it, it's hard for it to even get past 250 if you're trying to cook anything. So, but yeah, I can understand that as well. But if you got a decent cooker that's well insulated, or a thicker smoker, that's got thicker metal, definitely, it's going to hold the heat in it, and you don't have to worry about that. Fat cap up or fat cap down? I don't know why this always comes up.
Well, it does come up, and it's I see it every time the new guy gets his first butter brisket out for the grill. I'm a fat cap down guy. This isn't really a myth; it's a preference. But I think it's I think everybody's justification for whatever they do is all wrong. So uh, I cook fat cap down, and the reason I cook fat cap down is, well, there's two reasons. Number one, I know I'm not going to get any bark to form on the fat cap. It's just not going to happen. Uh, the second reason I like it down is because it makes it easier for me to get the meat off the grill. I would rather have my presentation side of the meat not down on the grill when we're talking about a butt or a brisket, or really if you even have a presentation side. But the if I cook fat cap up, that fat is going to render, and it's going to run down all over the meat, and it's going to inhibit the bark from forming on the sides and on the bottom of my meat where I want the bark to form. So that's the reason I cook fat cap down. And the myth that people buy into on that, I think, is that they think it's a self-basting concept, which it is. It's self-basting, but that fat's not finding its way into the meat. In fact, the exact opposite's happening. The fat that's inside the meat's working its way out as you heat it up. There's nothing you can do to put additional fat or moisture into that meat. So the people that cook fat cap up for that reason, they can do whatever they like. But yeah, it's not serving the purpose they think it's serving.
Yeah, and most of the time, I understand people will try to say, well, it depends on where the heat's coming from, because if you have it on a stick burner and the heat's coming from the side, like more on the top, you want that fat cap to protect it from burning or what have you. Or if it's coming from the bottom, like from a Kamado, you might want to have the fat cap, protecting it. One of the things I do, since I mix sous vide and barbecue, is I remove most of the fat cap from the briskets and pork butts that I do, because I don't need them to cook that long to have the fat cap on there to protect the meat. So, I remove most of the fat cap and don't even have to worry about that problem, because most of the time anyway, you're not eating that big clumps of fat anyway. You're throwing it out. You're not going to, or you're letting it render and mix in with, getting, chunky and black and mixing it in. But, I take a lot of the fat cap off both the brisket and pork butt. So, but yeah, that one's always, people will always put their 2 cents in. You always, whenever there's a fat cap up, fat cap down, people troll those posts. They make them just to get people going. It's crazy.
Well, there's one thing I'm going to try that I haven't tried yet on a butt. I think the next time, if I remember, I've been saying I'm going to do this, and I never remember to do it when I cook, but I'm going to cook my next Boston butt on its side, and where the fat cap is either going to be on the right or the left. And I'm doing that for a different reason. It's got nothing to do with the fat cap. When I'm cooking a Boston butt, the last piece of that Boston butt to become probe tender is the part that's directly above the scapula bone in there, the part that's shielded from the heat underneath. And I'm trying to figure out that if I turn that butt the other way, where that bone is running vertical in there instead of horizontal, if it'll change the way that cooks. But once again, that's got nothing to do with the fat cap or fat cap up or down debate.
All right.
Maybe we'll start a new trend.
There you go. That's that. So next time you see that, in one of the Facebook groups, just say sideways and see what happens.
Right.
All right. The need to smoke. You need to smoke, soak your wood before you put it in the smoker. I see this still today, that people will soak their wood, and it's more people with wood chips, I guess, because they think that it's going to last longer.
Well, yeah, they think it's going to last longer. It brings back a memory. When I was younger, my dad decided he was going to smoke. He wanted to make some smoked turkey at home. And he went out and bought one of these. It's a small bullet style smoker that had an electric heating element in the bottom of it. You put wood chips in it. And he told me, he said, you have to soak these wood chips to keep them from burning up. And that may have been the case, but I've played around early in my career of smoking. I soaked wood chunks. I've honestly not got a whole lot of experience with wood chips. I've used them on occasion, but I've soaked chunks, and that I can't really tell that they don't burn up any faster. I am once again a firm believer of about everything Meathead Goldwyn says, and he talks about that in his book and on his website in detail. Those, you can soak a wood chunk for, I don't know, what did he do? Soak them for 24 hours, and he got 2 millimeters of water penetration into that chunk. It's really insignificant because the water that it does take on, it evaporates back out so quickly that it's really having no impact on the wood.
And you really want smoke. I mean, that's the whole point of having wood in there, is you want smoke. So all you're really doing when you do that is you're preventing it from smoking, because it's steaming all that water out. And then when it does start smoking, it's going to burn no matter what. So I don't think it burns any less if you soak it. I got to confess, when I first started barbecuing, I heard that, and I did it on a couple of them. And then I started going, wait a minute, it's not really, doing anything. It's not slowing it down. And I see all this white stuff coming out. And then I started researching it and go, yeah, it doesn't make any sense to me either. So I stopped doing it. But, people will still, I don't know. It's one of those things that survives time. I guess people will still, do it. And like I said, I see it more on chips and people using it on a gas grill with like one of those little smoker boxes, thinking that it's going to last longer. But steam's not smoke, and that's one of the things I agree 100% with Meathead on, is they see steam coming out, think it's smoke, but it doesn't have any. It's not smoking; it's just steam. All right. Bigger smoke ring means more flavor. We all see that. Ooh, look at this big smoke ring I got on this brisket.
Yeah, smoke rings are the badges of honor of the barbecue chef. And yeah, the smoke ring, it's whether or not the smoke ring is a flavor element, but the flavor, there's a whole bunch of science behind smoke rings, and I've read most of it. I've learned about it firsthand from Harry Sue. I've read about it from Meathead, but I don't think it's a real player in the game of flavor. That I've done curing. I've done a lot of cured meat as well, and because of that, I have a little different understanding of that smoke ring. That smoke ring is the beginning of that meat curing. It's the nitrates that are produced by the combustion that are causing that meat to change color around the outside of it, just like a brisket changes to that color completely when you cure it in a brine that's got pink curing salt in it. The difference between the two is it's in the curing brine long enough for that smoke ring or that nitrate ring to go all the way to the center of the meat rather than just be on the outside edge. But that's just it. It's not smoke that's creating that. It's a byproduct of combustion. And smoke is a byproduct of combustion, but it's a particulate byproduct, and the nitrates are a gaseous byproduct. So there you have it. That's the little bit of science I know about the smoke and the
Uh,
smoke.
Yeah, now it does look pretty. There's no doubt about it. People look at that and go, yeah, but as far as flavor or taste or anything that is going to make that brisket taste any better or anything else, it's more cosmetic than anything. It's people have that in their mind that it should be better because it's got that bigger smoke ring. All right, smoke penetrates deep into the meat. This is a big one that I know that meathead's really big on too, and I understand how smoke works, and I know you do as well. And one of the things that we've talked about before is using smoke as a seasoning, and this kind of falls into that because we know that smoke can't penetrate deep into a meat, just like marinades don't penetrate deep into the meat. There's got to be a chemical reaction that actually what salt does when you're brining or curing. So what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I may be wrong, but here's what I believe. Smoke itself doesn't penetrate into the meat at all. It all accumulates on the surface. But what accumulates on the surface could be interacting with the moisture on the surface, and some of it could be pulled in slightly. But it's not going in with any depth. And yeah, it's a surface seasoning. It's like your garlic powder or anything else. It will accumulate on the surface of your meat, and it accumulates the most on the surface of your meat while the surface of your meat's wet.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to, and that's one of the things. I get in an argument with people that they think it has to in order for it to be, good. And it's just like you season a steak. When you put seasoning on a steak, it's not going all the way deep into the steak. It's being on the surface is plenty. It's going to, when you take a bite of it and chew it up, it's all going to mush together, and you're going to get that flavor throughout whatever you're eating. Just like with pulled pork, you pull pork, you're pulling it all apart, and you're mixing the smoke flavor all into that pork. So you're going to get that flavor throughout. So yeah, it doesn't penetrate, but it doesn't need to. It's going to season your meat no matter what. Meat takes on or will stop taking on smoke after a certain temperature.
Well, there is some truth to that, but technically it's incorrect. Like I said, smoke is a particulate. It's very tiny particles that are carbon based, and those particles can land on your food at any given time. And like I said before, the smoke sticks to your food more when it's wet. So when you're looking at something like a brisket, a Boston butt, or ribs, if you've ever watched one of those things cook, if you've been peeking instead of cooking, so you open that lid periodically and have a look at what's going on. During the first part of that cook, the outside of that meat stays moist. There's a lot of moisture coming to the surface of that meat. It stays wet, and it's collecting a lot more smoke. Later on in the cook, once that bark begins to form and solidify, the outside of your meat looks like it's dry. And it is drier. It's not losing as much moisture, and it's what is coming out. It's coming out at a faster rate once you get to that point. But I can't sit here and say that the meat stops taking on smoke. There's the potential for smoke to be added to that meat the entire time it's being exposed to it. But I do agree that it's taking on more smoke earlier in the cook. And depending on what you're cooking, we might not be talking about meat. What if we've got a pan of my lasagna in there, or a pan of macaroni and cheese? That stuff is like a smoke sponge, and it'll take on smoke for as long as you are putting smoke to it. And you can ask my wife, because she lets me know. My wife has got a much more acute taste for smoke than I do, obviously, because I'm around it more. But she'll let me know right away that something's too smoky or something tastes like an ashtray. Yeah, even though I've been doing this a long time, I hear it occasionally.
Well, and you can over smoke things, and I know especially poultry, and especially with skin on poultry, because that skin on chicken and turkey will suck up smoke. because it's not, the same protein as the muscles. I mean, skin will suck it up. And I've over smoked turkey and I've over smoked chicken before, and I can tell you, it can taste like an ashtray if you use the wrong smoke or too much smoke, or you have it on there, just too long. But yeah, that's another thing. Different things can take more smoke, but yeah, you're right. You can take, since it is a surface treatment, and moisture, will put more smoke to your meat. I always say that's why I spritz, and that's one of the things too I want to talk about is spritzing. People always think that they see these professional barbecue guys spritzing their meat after a while. It's not putting moisture into the meat. It's not making the meat more moist after it's done. It's actually putting that moisture back on the surface to collect more smoke so that it can dry and have another, like a layer of paint. It's what I kind of call it, like smoke paint. Once it's dry and you can tell that the bark's starting to form, you spritz it with some moisture, whatever it is, apple juice, water, whatever you want to use. It's going to collect more smoke and dry and do the same thing, just like a layer of paint if you're painting a wall.
So spritzing, I think I understand that. And when I went to Harry Sue's barbecue school at his home, it's basically teaching you competition style barbecue, and Harry teaches you how to make a smoke ring, and spritzing is part of that process. Harry tells you right up front, just like everybody else does, you're not being judged on your smoke ring, but he also says that he's never seen any barbecue that didn't have a smoke ring win a prize. So he teaches you in his class the spritzing, but you don't start spritzing until the bark starts to form on the meat, which is all happening around the time your meat gets to the internal temperature of 155 to 160 is when your bark starts forming. This is also when your stall starts. And according to Harry, and I have to agree with him because I've tried this and found it to be very successful at forming a smoke ring, is once that bark starts forming, you spritz that meat every 15 or 20 minutes until the bark is set. And every time I've done that, I've had a beautiful smoke ring, no matter what I was cooking or no matter how I was cooking it. So, but yeah, that's what you're doing with the spritz. The spritz is not adding any moisture to the meat. There's nothing you can do during a cook to add moisture to your meat. You can inject your meat beforehand, but that's a flavor addition. That's not going to end up as a moisture addition.
So let's talk about that, since you just mentioned the stall, and the meat stall happens on pork butt and brisket and some other things, but mostly on those two. You'll see it where it's humming along, the internal temperature's climbing, and it hits that 155 to 160, and it just kind of stops. And sometimes it can last a couple hours. And a lot of people will think that that's when the fat starts to render and the connective tissue starts melting is what causes that. But I know that you're like me, you read a lot of Amazing Ribs and Meathead, and Dr. Blounder found it was evaporative cooling. And like you said, it's when you're initially getting up to that temperature, you're seeing the moisture on the meat more because it's coming out of the meat. And right at that 155 to 160 ish, can be 5 or 10 degrees either way. That's when it starts to kind of balance out, and that's what this evaporative cooling kind of hits, and that's what causes the stall, right?
Exactly. The evaporative cooling, the best way to describe that where people can really understand what that means, it's like when you get out of the shower. When you step out of that warm shower into a cooler room, you get cold very quickly. Your skin gets cold. It's because that water is evaporating off your skin and you get really chilled. That's exactly what's happening to a brisket or a butt when it gets to that temperature range. The evaporation on the surface of the meat is happening at a rate that's equal to the heat coming into the meat, and the temperature stalls. It'll stay at that same temperature for a long time if you're cooking in certain ranges. That's exactly what the stall is. Um, I hate stalls. I hate dealing with stalls, and I've gotten to the point where I hate dealing with long cooks. And I've changed my philosophy of cooking so I don't have to deal with that anymore. If I do have to deal with it, it's because I chose to cook something overnight and intentionally cooked it at a lower temperature. I get rid of the stalls by cooking at 300 degrees. I'm technically not getting rid of the stalls, but they are not nearly as noticeable when you're cooking at 325 Fahrenheit.
Yeah, that's one of the benefits of the, the hot and fast, briskets and pork butt, that they're doing a lot on the competition circuit now, too. They're not just doing them, in the backyards. People are actually winning competitions cooking hot and fast, and it does it. It gets rid of that stall, or slows it, it shortens the stall period. If you're not cooking at 225 or 250, you're cooking a little bit hotter. The hotter you cook it, the less impact that stall has. So I always tell people, 225 is, you don't have to cook it at that.
Yeah, I think the biggest benefit of the higher temperatures is you have a lot more predictability of when that meat's going to be ready as well. 225 uh, is that's another holy, we call it a holy grail temperature for low and slow. Everybody thinks they're not cooking low and slow unless they're cooking at 225. I consider 300 degrees to be low and slow, and I can't tell any difference in my final product if I cooked it at 225 or if I cooked it at 300. Actually, I can. I've lied a little bit there. A bark, if you're not wrapping, a bark will get a lot firmer and a lot harder if you're cooking at 225, oddly enough, than it does if you're cooking at 300. But yeah, it's a preference that I've learned that I really love.
Yeah, and me too. I mean, I've one of the things that I like about mixing sous vide and barbecue is you don't have the stall. I'm putting the meat on at the same temperature that it would have stalled at anyway. So a lot of times, and like I've done this with poultry, where instead of chilling the meat before putting it in the smoker, I'll put it directly on the smoker right out of the sous vide bath. And if, let's say I was cooking it at 148 and I put it on the smoker, which is at 275 to let's just say 350 if I'm doing a chicken, because I want the skin to get crispy, it'll actually sit there at that temperature I sous vide it at for a good 25 to 30 minutes before it even starts rising internally. So it has that, evaporative type cooling situation going on because it's sitting already at a hotter temperature. So it takes it a while for it to even start climbing after you put it on a hot smoker. So, but that's definitely, there's definitely ways around the stall, and the stall is really from evaporative cooling. So let's get into just like one or two more, and then I'll let you go and cook dinner for your wife. Beer can chicken is the best.
Well, it's another one of those things. Uh, I've done it. I've made some good chicken, but I don't think the chicken was good because I cooked it on a beer can that had anything in it. But let me say this about that, and this also applies to a lot of these things we've talked about today. These are some of the things that make people feel good about what they're cooking. So I don't really want to, strip people of their what's the word I'm looking for here, of their methods that make them happy about doing what they do. I'm not a fan of beer can chicken. I've done it a couple times. Uh, the chicken's good, uh, but I understand what it's really not doing. People think it's infusing the flavor of the beer into their, or whatever liquid they choose, into their chicken, and it's not. It's just basically causing the inside of the bird to steam rather than cook normally. But everybody has their methods that they like, and beer can chicken's one of them. I see that particular thing. I see that a lot more out and around in the neighborhood. If I see somebody cooking on a grill, I'll see that beer can chicken thing going on. It's something they love to do, and it's something they're proud of, and they want to. That's their gig. That's that's what they do that makes their chicken better than the next guy's chicken or something. It's just like the fat cap up, you know. People believe, as long as somebody believes their results better because of the way they're doing it, that's great. They need to keep doing it that way.
Yeah, but you know, and they sell these things to make it easier for them to do it. That's the thing. I think people will go to the Walmart and buy this $10, you know, rack or what have you, and you know, and even Kamado Joe's got theirs, you know, where you can pour the liquid in it. There's a little ceramic thing. So yeah, it's and like you said, you know, people are going to do it no matter what you say, and they're gonna, you know, that's their thing. And I'm 100% for people cooking the way they want to, using, you know, whatever, you know, cooking their meat the way they want to, the doneness level, the seasoning, 100%. But when they start fighting about this stuff is what kind of gets me, is when you have to do beer can chicken. It is the best, you know. And I can tell you right now, me and you can cook chickens 10 different ways and it'd be better than anybody else's beer can chicken. So yeah, it's, you know, I'm all for people cooking the way they want to, but don't sit there and tell me this is the only way you can do it and that's going to be better than any other cooking method. Last one we'll talk about, and then I'll let you go, is searing locks in juices. That one's been around for a long time, and people think that, I don't know why people think that searing will lock in juices, but I think it started back when people were just strictly cooking in the kitchen, I think, with like roasts and stuff like that.
Well, I know why it's popular. It's just like politics. One of the things I like to keep in the back of my mind about politics and about religion and about cooking, those are the three big things, right? Okay, here's the deal. If somebody says something enough, if you hear something enough times, you will believe it, whether it's true, false, or otherwise. And, you know, I still hear the searing locks in the juices. You know, I can turn on Food Network or some cooking channel, and you'll hear that. And, you know, I know it's been debunked. I don't know how many times, but the where I hear that one the most often is when people are preparing their pot roast. It's going to go there, that chuck that's going to go in a crock pot for 8 hours with all that other lovely goodness. They're going to sear that chuck roast because it's going to lock in the juices. But what they're really doing is searing it. It ain't locking any juices in, but it's putting one heck of a nice flavor on the outside of that piece of chuck roast. And that's what's happening there. Yeah, I don't know how to I don't know how to convince people of that. I've gotten to the point where I'm trying. I haven't completely learned how to do this yet. Is to scroll on by that comment and just not. It's hard for me. I try with all my might sometimes, and I still will let myself get into an argument about something like that. And I'm getting better about it, but yeah, it doesn't lock anything in, but it does serve another purpose.
That's
So,
another thing I want to talk about that I didn't have listed, but it's, you know, it's the same subject. And going back to Harry Sue and the you know, competition barbecue people not winning if they don't have a decent smoke ring, it's you know, steaks with the grill marks, because on the steak cook-off circuit, you won't see. And I've talked to, you know, one of the president of the Steak Cook-Off Association, you know, he said that he doesn't see many, if all, you know, steaks winning the cook-offs that don't have the grill marks on them.
well, that's because the way their rules are written, that's very fortunate for the grill grate company, because they're the only product that makes the marks that nicely. The part of the judging of the steak cook-off is the appearance of the meat, and you know, it's just pretty well accepted. You've got to have that, and I like the looks of grill marks. I think grill marks look great on camera. They make that steak on the menu at the Outback look nice. But you've seen me cook steaks, and how many times have you seen me cook steaks where I didn't sear on a flat surface.
Yeah.
And there's a reason for that.
Yeah. That Maillard reaction, you want it all over your meat because, like you said, just like with the whole reason you're searing, it's not to lock in juices, is to create flavor on the whole surface of that piece of meat. And that's what you get on a flat surface. And
Yep. I've got grill grates and I use them, and the it creates a different flavor because what I'm getting out of that grill grate is not a Maillard reaction. I'm getting char, and I'm hoping to get Maillard reaction in between those char marks. But char is a flavor as well, and it's a flavor a lot of people like. And a little bit of char like that on the outside of a steak is good. I really like. I do prefer cooking pork chops like that, and I cook my thick pork chops that way after I marinate them. But there's a difference between the char flavor and the Maillard sear, and the combination of the two is good. But I prefer, that nice Maillard sear without the char on a steak. But that's just me. That's just how I like mine.
and that's the good thing about the grill grates. You can flip them over and get that flat surface. So that's what I normally do with them. Occasionally I'll cook them on the grill grate side just for show, if I'm having guests over and, I think I want to, they'll go ooh and ah if they see those, big, thick grill marks on there, or if I'm doing a video and I want to show it off. But most of the time, if I'm cooking for myself or my family, I'll flip those grill grates over and just cook on the flat surface, or I'll cook on a cast iron griddle or on the soapstone on the Kamado Joe. So.
Absolutely. The soapstone's my favorite flat surface to cook on. And I absolutely love that thing. And I can't get enough of that. That's my favorite cooking surface for searing.
Yeah, I just did some top rounds on them the other day, actually, that I sous vide first and I seared them because, the bigger ones, I got, two big top rounds and got a nice overall surface on both sides, or sear on both sides of them. It was awesome. All right, John. Well, I think we covered enough of those for today, and I want to let you get back to doing what you were doing today. I want to thank you for being on. Is there anything else you wanted to discuss or talk about? Anything new coming out with the Atlanta Grill Company or Kamado Joe? Or
There's a couple of new things coming around. It's a little too early for me to mention some of this stuff just yet, but I will let you know as soon as I can. I'm cooking dinner for Tanya tonight. I'm cooking experimental food, and if it's successful, you're going to see a video next week. I'm doing a macaroni and cheese like I've never done it before tonight, and if my wife likes it, it's going to become a cooking video next week. So keep your eyes open for that.
all right. Well, we look forward to that. Make sure you follow John on Man Cave Meals on Facebook, on YouTube. You can also check out the Kamado Joe YouTube channel, where you'll see a lot of John's videos. He's got plenty of them on there for the many years he represented Kamado Joe. But make sure you check out Man Cave Meals on Facebook and Instagram, YouTube. Thanks again, John. We will see you again on the next one, I'm sure.
Thanks, Darren. I'm looking forward to it.
All righty. Take care.